Welcome to Galaxy Moth Press Podcast, a show dedicated to queer and trans books. I'm Moth, founder of Galaxy Moth Press. My pronouns are they, them. Today, I'm joined by author Aubrey Ennis. Aubrey, before I share your bio, would you say hello and let our listeners know your pronouns?
Hi, I'm Aubrey. I'm so happy to be here. I am gender fluid. All pronouns are good. So she, they, him. It's very day dependent, so.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. So glad you're here. I'm going to read your bio. So I invite you to do whatever you need to do to withstand hearing your own.
Yep.
Aubrey Ennis is a queer writer and artist from Eastern Pennsylvania. They went to school for art and design and are currently working in commercial design while writing on the side. Name Her Holy is their debut novel. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Name Her Holy and your writing in general. So this is a really mesmerizing novel and a debut novel, which is so cool. So tell us a bit about this sapphic space fantasy.
Okay, so Name Her Holy is my space fantasy. I don't know what else to call it genre-wise. It's kind of like a fantasy with a space setting. And it is a story about the prophesized end of the universe. It deals with many cosmic gods. It deals with many worlds. And the core, story here is that a long dead god is rising from their kind of grave in space, and creating a blight that's crawling across the planets. And we have two main characters. One who is the herald of this coming end, which would be Kye. She's kind of the reluctant chosen one, to sort of resurrected to be a holy figure, meant to stop the end of the world. It's definitely not her first choice. And she's kind of a magic wielder, and she deals with chronic pain and illness throughout the book. And then we have Jude, who is our trans sword lesbian of the story, the paladin that we have kind of here. And she joins up with Kye's order after the blight hits her home village, and heads off into the greater universe. And as she gets out there and as the story unravels, she kind of gets to learn more about her own family legacy, which is like, we get into it as the story goes, but I don't want to say it right out of the gate.
All right, so Jude, Kye, and other characters have this depth to them that really enriches the story, and it feels it to me like when I was reading Name Her Holy, like it felt like I was there, and that I was a part of what was going on in their world, and maybe some of that was relating to the characters. But what goes into your process in character development?
Oh gosh. I'll say I think I'm kind of like a roundabout character development on this, because this was my first like real big book I ever decided to write. Having not really written since like high school. And I'm in my like late 30s, so this was like a real jump back in. And truly the start of like a lot of the character development was because Kye kind of started the story for me. Like, and I'll say that like I think truly when creating this story, and I'm sure other fantasy writers feel the same way, is that very often like the character development and the world building are kind of like dovetailed, like they kind of interact with each other in a certain way. But Kye was honestly a D&D character I wasn't ready to let go of. So she's changed, like almost morphed into a different person since that D&D game for sure. But like it was my entry back into being excited about fantasy after kind of like letting go of it for many years. And then once I got back in, I couldn't stop like reading fantasy and digging back in. But Kye was like a D&D character, and she was very, very personal to me. And then over time, it actually became, this is the roundabout way this book started, was I had some friends who were like, I've always wanted to play D&D, but I'm like nervous about playing with even D&D guys. Like, would you ever run a game? And it was a group of like 3 or 4 women I worked with. And I was like, I could run a game. I could do it. And I was like, but if I'm gonna do it, I want to like homebrew an idea. And so I started writing this idea, and I pulled Kye, the D&D character, as like she can be the quest giver, right, for this party. Um, and there's some seeds of the book that were in that original idea. So I was like, oh, she can be the quest giver. We'll age her up. She's running a religious order. It's like all of this stuff, and I was like, and what are we gonna send them to go find? And it was like, oh, we'll give her a wife, right? And they have to go find her wife. They're gonna find out all this stuff as they go, and like it'll be a deeper story. And I started the world building then, and like what I wanted it to be, and then that game never materialized. So, and then I just kept going. So Kye kind of started from a personal place for sure. I think I put a lot of myself into both of the main characters. They adopted a lot of my own bad habits, um, as characters often do. For definitely, for example, Kye is the character that diagnosed me with autism later in life. As happens, where I put a lot of personal traits into her, and then people were like, "Yeah, you might want to look into it." It's like, cool. Very high masking character for sure. But I think it's like I had a lot of fantasy novels I had read that had like certain stories and plot points and these grand like cosmic things, and you only get a little taste of it. And that was like where I started building that character into. I was like, oh, what if we take this character? What is the, to go back to the D&D thing, like what's the cleric and the paladin, like what is that life actually like, and what does that mean for that character? And what if you're shoved into this whole like cosmic game, and how does that build you as a person, and how does that change you as a person? And like, I don't know. I think Kye was me asking a lot of existential questions, quite honestly. But, and I think they're all of the characters in this book are kind of like collections of like my own personal things, but then collections of like people I know and love. And I think every one of them kind of pulls from someone in my life in some small way, at least. Like, I don't know. It's like I think I get a lot of love for like Jude's dad, who is just outright my father-in-law as a person. Like, just absolutely took him and was like, we're just gonna put you there. And like Haven is kind of based on actually my brother-in-law, who's a good friend of mine. Like there's little personality traits that all get pulled into there for everyone. But I don't know. There are a lot of different things. Sorry,
Yeah.
I think I got all totally rambling on that one, but
No, that's absolutely what I was curious about. And I think I'm wondering, is that like for people listening who are writing or working towards writing a story, was that a conscious decision to pull in traits from others, or was it something that evolved as you were writing, or uh, another third or fourth thing
yeah,
that
secret third thing.
yes.
That's a really good question. I honestly, I think when I first started out, I really genuinely, I can't be clear enough. I did not know what I was doing. I'll say this will be on my advice portion later. Just write the story, but like the first draft of this story is so very hard to go back and read. Because I was really figuring it out as I went. But like, I think when I started, I started pulling. I'll say this. I think when I started, I had been years of reading. Like I got back into fantasy in a very like voracious reader kind of way, and I started digging back into it. I was like, there's all these fantasy books, and I haven't read fantasy since I was a kid, and I'm full tilt back in. And it was kind of like when I first started, I think I was pulling elements from characters in books that I loved, where I'm like, oh, I want a little bit of this, like, and it's like the two book series that really broke my brain. And then, ultimately resulted in me being like, I should write a book. We're like Locked Tomb, obviously. I feel like that hits everybody. And then and then another series, it's the Tiger's Daughter is the name of the first. book, and it's like a sapphic series. But like there were characters in those books that I went, ooh, I love this. It resonates in a way. So I kind of want to like pull what I loved from that character. And those were like the first like boilerplate like versions of these. But then the longer I spent with them and the more time I dug into them and the more I like, I don't know, you just spend a lot of time with characters when you're writing a book.
Mhm.
Like they're existing in your head at all times. You're in constant conversation. But I'm like, the longer I spent with them, the more I started pulling, like finding the things that I loved in other people, starting to attach to them, like, or, finding the struggles that friends or family or, loved ones had had, and they kind of like then sort of like sit in there, and it kind of blossoms them into bigger characters than like, me just being like, I'd like a sword lesbian in this book. But like, but it's like, it's cool. It's cool to have a lady knight in a book, but like what makes her like really special and what makes me really like spend all my time thinking about her and what her thought process is. And it's like pulling from things I've personally experienced or pulling from things like my spouse. There's a couple of things in there that I'm like, when I got stuck with what would you do? I'm like, well, what would Joe do? And you know what I
Mm.
mean? And like, or
Mhm.
even just like, Jude has a touch of uh, like my mom's family is all Irish immigrants, and she's the youngest of five. And, she had a father that passed away from Alzheimer's when she was the same age that Jude's mother died. Like it was like little things where I'm like, over time, those family lore and histories start to like sit in those characters, and then they kind of warp them into their own thing. So that's the really long answer.
Yeah. No, I mean just the thinking about the relationship between not only character development from, our lived experiences with other people, but
Mhm.
also character development from the stories that we read, and how there's such a relationship between what an author is reading and what an author is writing.
Oh,
And
majorly. Yeah.
it's so helpful to make sure that you're reading what you enjoy and writing what you enjoy, I think is kind of my
Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah,
take on it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned character development and world development working. I'm not sure if you use that exact wording,
Mhm.
but like working in tandem.
Yeah.
And I definitely, I hearing you say that, I definitely feel like that is part of that depth and richness of the character development that interactions are having with these really distinctive worlds,
Mhm.
and the way that there isn't just one setting that's a character,
Mhm.
but these multiple settings that have these really different qualities about them. And so I'm really curious about setting as a character
Mm.
or
Oh,
development.
yeah.
So kind of tell me like what that brings up for you.
Okay. Yeah, I will say, and I think in writing this book, the settings themselves, multiple, were like writing their own characters. Because and again, I don't recommend this to anyone. When writing your first book. Um, but I when I said what kind of book do I want to write and said if I'm because I truly was like, who knows if I'll even finish it, and if I'm gonna write it, it has to be things I'm excited about. Because if I'm not excited about it, I won't finish it. Um, but like I was like, I want to travel multiple worlds. Like I want this book to have multiple worlds in it. I want us to be able to get to do a tour of them. Even other planes. Like we're gonna get there, and as like it the world building itself took so long, which it does for anybody. Like world building itself is an expansive project to take on. But when you're doing multiple worlds and you're only going to be there for a little bit because you're like popping in and out, um, there's so much you write that never makes it in, obviously. But like, I think developing the worlds happened again in tandem with the characters. They all have to sort of dovetail together. Like, and when you're building a character, it's like, right, I have Kye. I said to myself, what if I had Paul Atreides and I made him a lesbian? You know, like I'm like, where's this little guy? And then like
Oh
and
my
like
gosh, I love that.
it's the joke around the house is like you just took Paul and made him a lesbian, but like what if you have this little character you're obsessed with, but you're like, you now need a world for them to live in, you need a terrarium to put them in, and like and what influences their lives and how they got to be here, and like, you know, even questions like how queer normative it is in the world that they live in. How does that play into their life? Or like, I don't know. I never got super hung up on like the economics and trade, but it does factor in, you know. But it's more like what do you want to evoke out of that world? How do the characters live in it, interact in it? And how do the larger like geopolitical things just like affect historically where they're at? Um, because especially when you have two main characters that are coming from very different worlds and that's intentional, like you really have to spend time on the back end history of that world and like figure out like where did Jude's people, the Elden, come from? Like how do they tie into the whole world lore? Because the whole world lore is going to be different on every kind of planet or sphere, is what they're called. Like
Mhm.
it's in a way, it's like I had to write the history briefly, very briefly, write the history for each world in order to know where they butt up against each other and where they disagree and where there's misinformation. And like, you know, you write the actual world lore as it actually happened, and then you spin off and write like, okay, so if you're from the ports, which are the planets that Kye is from, the little port spheres that started as like trade hubs, what does that history look like? How do they interpret it? If you're from where Jude's from, the history is totally differently interpreted. Um, and then you kind of build structures around that. So like, yeah, it's fully character building, but multiple worlds.
Mm. Yeah, and I can really hear the tabletop gaming influence in
Oh
that
yeah.
as well, and just, just thinking about too that you don't have to put everything, and you shouldn't put everything on the page
Mhm.
really that you come up with about, and I don't mean you personally, but I mean people in
Yeah, yeah,
general
yeah. But like,
that
yeah.
people, come up with, in
Mhm.
their writing, but it's still informing what you're
Yeah.
doing, like what you're saying. Like it's important to have that level of development so
Mhm.
that what's going on in your story makes sense to you, but then it's also going to make sense to the reader, even if they
Mhm.
don't have that, they they don't have a wiki like
Yeah, they don't need
your personal wiki of like the
yeah.
how the economics works.
It's important,
It
but we don't need to know about it.
Yes, but it's there, and so
Yeah.
it grounds it in a sense of reality,
Yeah.
that comes across as you're reading, Name Her Holy, that I could feel at least that there was
Okay, good.
more to this world, and feel like not in a way that like, "Oh, why don't I know more?" I don't mean it like that, like, it
Mhm.
just it gave it a feeling of real context, I guess,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
so, yeah, so I really appreciated that. Yeah, well, that's really cool, and I love the D&D connection.
Oh, yeah.
So
I think it's a starting point for a lot of people. It definitely was what got me back in, like roped me back in to unabashedly enjoying fantasy again, like for sure.
yeah, well, and for character development, because,
Oh yeah.
when you're creating a character for whatever game you're playing,
Mhm.
you're thinking about things like their intelligence, their charisma, their like
Mhm.
you're thinking about all these
Yeah.
individual character traits, and then how would that character react in X situation, and then you actually get to experience it while you're
Yeah.
playing,
I
and
I truly believe it's like D&D is actually a really good exercise for character building. Only because you really have to put yourself now in that character. You can build a whole story, and I'm sure everyone's had this happen to them where like you've started a character story for your game, and then once you start playing it, you're like, oh, and this happens to me all the time, and I'm like, oh, they're actually like this now that I'm in it and I'm playing it and I'm working through their motivations and everything. Like, it actually forces you to put yourself in their place and like work through it. which is so helpful for me personally. Like, I kind of need that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And it's kind of helping me reflect on some of my writing practices and realize like, oh, I guess I guess all that Pathfinder
Yeah, it
that
does
I've
though.
like it really
Well, and it was interesting. It was interesting when I started writing this and doing, you deep dive into characters and you start working through it. And I would write things that never made it into the book that were just like, I need to kind of sort out where Kye's head is right now. Or
Mhm.
another character, doesn't have a point of view. And I'd sit and write something out of their thought process on it because I'm like, I need to dig in. Um, happened to me a lot. But I think when I have whatever I'll mispronounce it, but whatever that thing is where you struggle to process feelings right out of the gate. Um,
Oh, yes,
yeah,
yeah. I
we
I
we
have that too.
yes, we jokingly say in our house that it will take Aubrey 3 to 5 business days to get back to you about how they felt about that. But like,
Okay, for
sometimes it's
me,
true.
sometimes it's been years
Oh
for me,
yeah.
and
Oh,
I'll
same.
be
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Oh, wait a minute, I
That's
remember
what. Yeah,
on
it happens to me all
Tuesday,
the time.
September, blah blah."
Yep. It's rough, and it's like, but it's one of those things where when I started writing, I was like, I can outline an idea, have an idea of where it's going, and then when I start writing and I start writing the character, it's like I get to tap into how they're actually feeling, and then I'm like, oh my god, they wouldn't do that at all. Because like now that I'm in it, and it takes me a while to uncover what they're really feeling. But it was interesting to start doing that when I personally struggle with verbalizing how I'm feeling a lot. And it kind of helped me to get better at verbalizing a little bit, like out loud. But it was like a real big challenge, and then it became a thing where I was like, I couldn't plot out a book to save my life because I just have to start like digging and like figure out how everybody feels because I'll never know until I start writing it. So,
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's absolutely the same for me, and,
mhm.
I kind of wonder if there's some sort of, like, uh, autistic writing style
Right?
almost that, like,
No, yeah, because
or I mean, I'm sure there's multiple autistic. Like, I shouldn't say there's just
yeah.
one, but I just hear these commonalities, like, as I do my
Mhm.
podcast, and I'm like the nerdy part of me is like, "Wait a minute.
Yeah, is there a
This feels
correlation?
like a thesis."
I know. Well,
It's a
because I know so many autistic writers, and I'm like, I'm sure it's just because we find each other, but like at the
Yeah,
same time, I'm like, I do wonder if there's something there. Is like the process itself, is very
yeah.
helpful. But
Yeah, it is, and
mhm,
I had a huge realization. I was working on a novelette
mhm,
before this podcast, and I had this huge self realization from what I was writing, from
mhm.
what I thought at first was just a really silly thing, and then I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, wait a minute.
yeah,
And it sort of feels like I think a lot of my experience in life is sort of like there's all these background processes running in my brain, and
hmm
I don't really know consciously that they're there,
yes,
but then I'll have, like, the realization. It's like the program, like, completes its
yes. Oh my God,
cycle,
yes.
and I
Yep.
have a realization or I have, like, and so for me, like, writing, I can't plot all that stuff out either. I have to just go for it because
Yeah,
the programs are running in the background,
yeah.
and they're gonna
This like speaks to my soul. Like you have no
Yes.
idea. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you can
exactly that. Yeah, that's the best
um
way I've ever heard it put.
And it really to me feels like a strength, and maybe it's just because I want to accept things
hmm
about me as a strength, which
Yeah,
you know what? Why
same.
not? Like, I think that's good.
I
Like,
think it does
you
though. Like
know?
I think it gives you a place to go like deeper with it and really
Mhm.
dig in. Where like I don't know, maybe it's a particular strength to the neurodivergent crowd. Like I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'd
Yes.
like to think.
Yeah, I do too, and I think that it's sort of like we're fulfilling, uh, a really ancient like the weird anthropologist side of me is like we're fulfilling this like ancient role as like storytellers and shamans
Yeah,
and the
I think
and,
so.
like we're wired this way for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, because truly, 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 it is like a thing sometimes where I'm like, everybody makes like, I think when I was doing art more, it's like, people are like, I'm just the vessel for this. And I'm like, that's true though, because I'm
Yes.
like, I don't know until I start digging in. And once I start, I can't stop. And then it's like a whole stories in there that I didn't even know was there. And like,
Yes.
it just, yeah, it's like I have to go personally dig it out, but it's, it feels sometimes like it is its own creature, and I'm
Mhm.
just there with it. Like,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
100%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It really feels like channeling almost to me,
Yeah.
like, it's really, yeah, I could get, like, super I need to at some point do some kind of really mystical episode
Yeah.
of this show and just really
Yeah.
dig into it,
Find
but
the right guest for that and, like, just dig into it because I think there is something to that.
yes, yeah, absolutely. Well, and I almost feel like it's a round table, like, get all the
Yeah. Oh, if
authors
you do that, let me know.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it now, so okay, well,
Mm.
this is awesome, but to get us back, I don't wanna
Yeah.
get myself down. I'm gonna I'm
Oh, I'll
go
go down that rabbit hole, so, yeah,
yeah,
we'll move on.
so, I wanted to just, I was looking over reviews for Name Her Holy, and,
Mhm.
somebody in a review pointed out something that articulated something that, like, I could feel, but I couldn't really verbalize. There's
Mm.
the verbalize
Yep.
thing again.
Yep, yep, yep.
But, like, the review, talked about how you handle the complexity of Jude's identity with all this
Oh.
nuance and care and how, it just feels so authentic instead of
Mhm.
Jude being like a bunch of tropes.
Yeah.
And, I really speak to how, gender and queerness are a part of this novel and, just that general sense of how that works for you.
Yeah. Oh god. I mean, this doesn't exist without, like, this story doesn't exist without the, like, freedom to explore the gender and queerness of fantasy. Like, I think it's definitely a driving force in it. And I had some beta readers during it to be like, I enjoy how some of these plot points are not specifically about gender, but like the mirror is there, like you get.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, God, that's a really nice thing to say. But like, I think, okay, firstly, I talked about reading a ton of fantasy and I got back into it like somewhere around, like 2019, 2018, and started really digging back into it. But I had grown up on so much fantasy. It was really my thing. I loved it. And TV shows and movies and sci-fi and like it just everything. But all of those things that I grew up and loved, I felt like I was always sort of altering in my head to make them
Mm.
feel more like I was a part of them.
Mhm.
Um, they're obviously very at that point in time, like heteronormative and very, very not queer, distinctly not queer. We're gonna make sure that we don't allow room for that. We can give a shout out to Xena Warrior Princess, but like, there
Yes.
was only so much they could do there. The show's been on my mind a lot lately, but like,
I'm
although
rewatching it right now.
yes, I started rewatching
My
it
wife
recently.
and I are rewatching well, she's actually
It's
never seen it, so
I only caught it in bits and pieces as a kid, and when you're watching something as a kid, and you're like, I'm embarrassed to be watching this, have other people see me watching this, and I don't know why. And
Oh.
you know what I mean? Where you're like, I'm feeling something about this, and I don't know how to articulate that because so you're like, I feel like I shouldn't be seen watching this. I don't know why. Um, but like, Xena's a good example though, where like the writers on that were all queer and we're all into it, but like there's a limit, on
Yeah,
how far they could go with that.
yeah.
Um, but it's like, yeah, that's an anomaly. The rest of it was very straight. Um, and like you just grow up in it and you fit yourself into the archetypes you see there. Um, like as a kid with a loose sense of gender, right out of the gate, it was like I was always fitting myself into the like Han Solo archetype, where I was like, I want to be that, right?
Hmm.
But I'm like, it's not quite right though. It's just, trying to find yourself in those places. And then when I started reading fantasy again, much later as an adult, it was I started out reading again the more classic but very heteronormative fantasy. And then it was like, again, we'll shout out the Lock Tomb series. Absolutely made me go, oh my god, you can do this, but make it queer. And I know that sounds so dumb. There's so many queer books out now, but like, you know what I mean? You're like,
Oh, I know. No, 100%.
like the first one that makes you go like, oh my god, all these stories I grew up with, but now I can see myself there and I can see my friends in them, and like not just do me trying to figure out where I fit in that. So that was like really, I mean, because traditional publishing wise, now that I read like basically purely indie books, I'm like, there's a whole world, right? There's a rich world of like queer indie fantasy. It's phenomenal. It's out there. It's great.
Yes.
Like there's so many good books and there's so much representation. There's so many characters that you're like, oh, I connect with this. But when I started out reading fantasy again, there were few and far between, and I found them all and read all of them. You know, like I was like, every possible queer fantasy book I can find, I'm gonna read. And then I just kind of ran out, and I wanted more. I was like, I need more of this. I know what I want out of a story. That's what I'm gonna do. So the queerness is intrinsic to the storytelling. There are characters I felt like I didn't have growing up that I wanted to see, and I think I need to be right out of the gate here. I am not a trans woman. Jude is. I've had some people ask me if I was, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not. But Kye has definitely got my like I put all the gender feelings into her, you know, as I was working through her as a character. Not fully all of them, but it's in there. Like she's definitely in the gender queer area for sure. But and it really informs her queerness really informs her story and like a lot of her psyche and how she got to be where she is today. And then Jude is a character that I think when we were talking about character development, there are some characters who you have to really pick at and figure out who they are. And like Kye, I feel like I was convincing to come down from the rafters in my brain, like setting out snacks and being like, come just talk to me. Like let me pick your brain. I need to know more about you. And she's a little more closed off. And
that totally makes sense having read.
yeah,
Like
it's the most her thing that she's like, I don't
yes.
know. I'm gonna be cautious about it. But and then there are some characters who I feel like when you're writing, they really just come up, grab you, and are like, this is who I am, this is what I have going on, and you're like, great, cool, thank you. And Jude is one of those characters. But I think it's like she's like an amalgamation of quite a few like trans women I grew up with or then was friends with in my 20s. Like definitely one I knew in high school is dear to my heart. But like I had a friend who is a tattoo artist and just the coolest girl you've ever met. But like tattoo artist rode a motorcycle, like very butch trans woman. And she had said to me something along the lines once of like, you know, it's weird. My mom was actually like kind of weirdly cool with me coming out as a woman. She's like, but she like still can't understand why I'm not the kind of woman she would be or like she is. And I'm like, that is a wild thing to have to deal. Like, I don't know. It was just interesting. So it kind of spurred and like stuck in there. But I'm endlessly happy that I've had quite a few trans women reach out to me and be like, Jude is a really good well-rounded character. And I'm like, thank you, I'm so glad, because I spent a lot of time working through her and talking to friends, and then like I even got a sensitivity reader because I'm like, please just, I'll pay you money to tell me if I fucked up, like just tell me, you know, like
Yeah.
if there's anything I'm getting wrong, I need to know it, because you know. But I'm like, I don't know, it's one of those things where I'm like, she is a trans character, it is an important part of her story, but it's not the only part of the story. And I think it's, I don't know, she's kind of the heart of this whole story in a way. She's the hero of the story in my mind. And giving her that full breadth of life, you know, kind of like makes her into who she is. And I didn't want her to be totally defined by it, you know. But yeah, I have a lot of people to thank on that end where I'm like, building that character was definitely a like loving process. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you how you describe it as a loving process. That's really beautiful.
Oh, I love her the most. I'll be honest. I always am like I can't pick between the two of them favorites wise, but I think she's always going to be closest to my heart as a character.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. You can have favorites.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. I'm just still kind of like stuck on just the warmth of that loving process.
Okay.
I love it so much. Um, so just to kind of like go a little like zoom out a little bit. I
Mhm.
was trying to think of
Yeah,
the word.
yeah.
Just to kind of like zoom out a little bit in terms of writing craft. Name Her Holy is the first in a duology, right? Like
Oh
you're gonna
yeah.
yeah, so I wasn't sure if it's not a trilogy. So
No, no, just two, just the two. I don't think I'll
okay.
survive three.
Yes. So what's your writing process like now for writing a
Oh.
sequel, for writing a second book?
Oh gosh, it is hard. I'll be honest, again, if you're writing your debut novel and you want to do a big epic sweeping fantasy, I probably don't recommend starting with a duology. Um that being said, I when I started this story, I realized quickly when I started kind of like loose mapping it out, like where it's like that thing where I'm like I know where the story ends. Um and I know the little points we need to hit to get there. Uh but when I started writing it, I was like, this isn't one book. Like, there's no way I can fit
Mm,
what I want to do here in one book. It would be really rushing it. Um, so it was like, all right, we can split this into two books, which is a difficult thing to do right out of the gate, I'll say, because and I can't even imagine doing a trilogy. So, yeah. Shout out to everybody doing a trilogy. I don't know how you're doing that. But like, because you truly have to make sure that it's like one big cohesive story, but then also each book feels like its own cohesive and satisfying story. Um, which is very tricky, to be
mm,
totally honest. Um, but I'll say I'm personally enjoying it. I really took on this project with a when I started writing again of like um if you're not enjoying it, you can stop doing it. Like as long as you still love it, keep going. And the nice thing about this project has been that I keep finding the love in it that I want to keep going. um but like jumping back in has been awesome. I genuinely enjoy it so much, like getting back into the world. um I think I when I started writing this, again, that first draft was really awful. I genuinely didn't know what I was doing, and writing this book took me like 4 years total. Um, and a lot of that was me learning as I went along the way. I'm hoping and praying it'll take me less time the second time around, but now that I'm in, I'm like, it's probably gonna be the same. Because it's so much, and it's so much to make sure that like you are carrying on the story again in a satisfying way. And then there's the thing where you're like, okay, everything in the first book is now canon. Like I can't change any of that. And I'm a very
mm,
like loosey goosey kind of writer. So I'm like,
mm.
there were things where I had like an idea the other day. I was like, oh, and I was like, nope, you can't go back and change that. That is what it is now. Um, but it's like, it's tricky because at this point, what is really hard about it is that I laid out the first book and there is so much information that you don't get told in the first book. Like the threads of it are there, the hints of it are there, like the whole foundation has been laid out and you only get like little hints of it. There's clues, but I'm like the second book has to be picking up all of those clues, digesting them, figuring it out, and then undisclosed last part of the book that I really can't talk about. But how do we get there and also make it feel like it's a good story? Like not just being
Mm,
like, aha, and now we found this. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's tricky. It's fun. I'm enjoying it a lot, but it's been really tricky to do.
yeah. Well, and that
Yeah.
enjoyment is so important.
Mhm.
As I work on things, if I'm not enjoying something I've started, I'm just like, you know what?
Yeah.
I have a folder called shelved and
Yeah. Yeah.
I just put stuff in there because I've just, this is my life that I'm putting into my
Yeah.
time, my life, and I want to enjoy it. And I think my hope is that that makes for an enjoyable story for the person
Mhm.
reading it, that comes across. So along those lines, what advice you've given some really great advice throughout this for authors, but what advice would you give to specifically queer and trans authors?
Oh, see, this was the tricky thing is I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, the thing is that I always want to say is like, obviously write the thing you really love, um, because that's the only thing that's really gotten me through is like if I'm writing the thing I really love, I will put that love into it, and I will enjoy the process the whole way, even when it sucks. Um, 'Cause editing sucks. I don't love it. I do and I don't, but some days it's just hard. But like I realized when I was thinking about that where I was like, again, now that I'm like in the indie scene and like reading so many like queer and trans books that people are writing, I'm like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen is that we are now at that point where everyone is just writing what they really love and enjoy because they're like, fuck it. Like
Mhm.
this is like times are hard, things suck, and I think it's created this environment where everyone's like, no, just write the thing you love, write the story you love, get it out there because like no one else is going to do it for you. And I think we get to live in that time where we all feel empowered to do that. Like I was talking about the Xena thing where I'm like, growing up in the era of like that stuff's just not out there. And you have to
Yeah,
like kind of look for any thread of it and like hold it close, like a little flame that you're hoping won't go out. Like, and now I'm like, there's a whole communities for it, and everyone is just writing what they love, and that's my favorite thing I've ever seen. Um, so I want to say keep doing that. Like two is in that same vein, just like just do it. Like I recently I was talking to someone on Blue Sky in my comments, and they said something along the lines of like, I really want to start writing an idea, but like I'm afraid I'll find out I suck at writing. And I was like, oh no, it's soapbox time because let me tell you, you can write. Like please don't ever shoot yourself in the foot on that. Just I did not know what I was doing at all. I showed up to this, I wrote some terrible paragraphs and I said, well that's bad, but I'm still excited about the idea. I'm gonna keep going. I was not a writer for many, many years, decades. Like I sucked at this real bad when I started. I think if you're kicking yourself out for that, don't do it because you need to just do it. Like you'll find a better writer in yourself if you're excited and you keep going. It's always in there. I promise it's in there. Don't self silence yourself. There's plenty of people out there on a larger scale right now trying to do that. Don't do that to yourself. You know, keep going. So I don't know. And find your community. Oh my god. It's the best.
Mm, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, you'll find a better writer in yourself if you keep going. Ah,
I'm so serious about that. I
oh,
yell at
that's
everybody about
so
this.
good. Oh my gosh. Oh, I have
I think like
chills.
oh good. I'm glad. I think I've been an artist for years, right? And if you're an artist, you hear it all the time where people look at something you've done, they're like, I could never do that. And I'm like, you can though. Like I promise. Like everyone has that capability, and I think about it a lot with like the rise of AI and everything. Where I'm like,
Uh,
no, don't give up on yourself. Like that's giving up on yourself is to ask the machine to do it. Like you can do it, even if you think you can't do it. You can do it. Like you just have to like love it and keep going. You
yeah.
know.
Yes. Yeah. So much of it is just keep going. Like,
Yeah, honestly, that's the
you
only way I wrote this book was
you'll
just
build up progress as you
you
go. Like,
will. I learned as I wrote this book, like really truly. And shout out to my editor for really action Moss Hanlon. If you haven't read Under the Dragon Moon, it's fantastic. Just give a little shout out to my editor because they're fantastic. For reining me in, because there's a lot I didn't know still, but at the same time I'm like, it all worked out, It became a book and people, tell me things that they really enjoyed about it, and that's the greatest gift on earth. So, you know.
mm, yeah. Well, Name Her Holy is a gift. It really is. Like, I loved it so
I'm
much.
so glad.
So as we wrap up,
Mm.
tell us about the hardback edition of
Yeah.
Name Her Holy and what we could expect next.
So I have done the artwork for both of the I did the artwork for the paperback, because I draw them all the time. If anybody follows me knows. It's constant.
It's
Um,
delightful.
I'm glad. They still take up a lot of rent-free space in my brain. So I had drawn the paperback, I really loved it, but I always wanted to do a hardback and to do like wildly different artwork for it. So I really took my time with it. I didn't want to rush it if I didn't have something I loved. So around like the 6 month mark, I had something I liked, so I put it out. It's currently, by the time this podcast comes out, the pre-orders will be done, but because I've signed pre-orders up right now. But I'm sure I'll do another run, but it will be out in October. You will be able to get the hardback edition with the full cover and the little Easter egg on the cover that is in there. But it's really pretty and I'm really excited about it. So, and up and coming, I am loosely, and I need to say it loosely, looking into trying to figure out how to do an audiobook. We're thinking about it. We're auditioning people. We're seeing how it goes. So
Ooh.
it's tricky. One, it's obviously like a good chunk of money, but it's also like trying to get the voices right for your characters is so hard.
Mm,
Because I don't know how to describe what they sound like in my head is part of the problem, but we're getting there. We're figuring
yeah.
it.
Oh,
So
I remember this conversation on Blue
yeah,
Sky.
when I was like, what does Kye
Yes.
sound like to you? People had some really good answers, and I was like, well, I'm glad she comes across a certain way because I feel like there were some pretty consistent answers. So I was like, great.
Yes, yeah, it was
Yeah.
really interesting to read that thread and see that consistency.
It's cool because the thing I always say about what is fascinating to me about Jude as a character is that I find that people prescribe their regional, like rural accent to her. So
Oh, totally.
yeah, so where I am coming from a point where I was like, in my head, she's got a touch of the Irish accent to her, like a little bit like the hosier sounding in that way. And then I find people who are like, she sounds like Southern, like America Southern to me, and I'm like, that is amazing to me. That's my favorite thing. Like, I love that people just put their own regional area on her, and I'm like, that's awesome. I'm so sorry for
Yeah.
hearing my dog barking.
Oh, that's okay.
But
Your dog's on the show now.
yeah, that's Mac. He's a sweetheart, but he's got his big boy bark on right now. Probably because mail is getting delivered or something.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and coming on the podcast. It's just been so awesome to talk with you. And where can our listeners find you? And I will put in the show notes a link to grab copies of Name Her Holy. But tell us where we can find you online.
I am on Instagram and Blue Sky primarily. That's kind of where I've landed. And it is Cleric of the Void on both of those. And then my website is the Hallowed at one of those card websites. But we'll add the links.
Yeah, I'll add it. So
Yeah. But it's been really phenomenal to be on. I was so excited to talk to you. Sorry, I had listened to your podcast and was like, oh, this will be really fun. So
yay! Oh my
I'm
gosh.
really enjoying it. It's been really good.
Oh,
So
thank you so much. Thank you for
yeah,
listening.
you just have such good conversations. I was like, oh yeah, this will be fun.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Aubrey, for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much.